Welcome to the Journey to Esquire, the podcast alumni updates. I am your host, Abigail Dean. In this series, we take a walk down memory lane as we reconnect with the remarkable alumni of the Journey to Esquire Scholarship and Leadership Program. Join me as we embark on a journey to discover where are they now? Amidst all the challenges and uncertainties, a group of determined individuals stepped into the Journey to Esquire Scholarship and Leadership Program, ready to seize their dreams of becoming legal professionals. Fast forward today, and it's time to catch up, to witness their journeys, celebrate their achievements, and gain insights into the valuable lessons they carry forward from the program. So, what's in store for this podcast series? Well, get ready to be inspired, intrigued, and enlightened. In each episode, I'll be sitting down with a remarkable alumnus or alumni, the trailblazers who embarked on their journeys to become legal professionals. We'll dive into their experiences, challenges, and triumphs, and explore how their participation in the Journey to Esquire program has played a pivotal role in shaping their paths. We'll reminisce about the highlights, uncover the pivotal moments, and get an inside look into their lives today. From courtroom victories to personal growth, from mentorship to forging lasting connections, these alumni have stories that resonate with all of us. Through their tales, we gain a greater understanding of the impact of education, scholarship, and leadership on their journeys. Hello, everyone. This is Abigail Dean, the host of the Journey to Esquire. And today we have a special guest. Her name is Jemima Zetrenne. When I was working at the state attorney's office over in Hillsborough County, we worked together for a short period of time. And so it is so great to be able to see you again and see how you're doing. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really, really good. It's nice seeing you as well.
That's good. That's good. All right. So what year did you remember going through the Journey to Esquire program?
I was the first class of the program, and so I think I graduated from the program in 2019. So I
Okay.
started in 2018, I believe, because you guys usually start in the fall, and then I graduated in 19. At the same time, I graduated law school, so.
Okay, so can you talk a little bit about how your legal career has evolved since you graduated from the Journey to Esquire program in law school?
I've pretty much been in the working at the same place since I graduated from law school and completed the program. I've been at the state attorney's office since 2020, February of 2020, and I have moved up in positions since being at the state attorney's office. So I started my career there as an assistant state attorney in misdemeanor county, and then shortly after that, well, actually, let me backtrack. I actually started in intake. When I first started there, I was doing intake files, making filing decisions on misdemeanor cases, and then I transitioned into the actual misdemeanor division and in county court, and then did that for a little bit, and then I was promoted to the juvenile portion of the office, basically prosecuting juvenile crimes or crimes committed by juveniles. And then I was there for another short while. And then after that, I was promoted into the felony division, and that is in circuit court in Hillsborough. And I've been doing that ever since. I've been in that position for about a little over a year and a half. And then, as I stated to you earlier, before we started the podcast, I am actually about to transition into a new position where I'll be the assistant state attorney that will handle all of the drug court cases. Basically, it's a problem solving court. There are several different types of problem solving courts in Hillsborough County: mental health, veterans treatment, and drug court, and also juvenile drug court, I believe. And so basically, I'll be in charge of the drug court portion of the problem solving court, and basically prosecuting drug crimes or crimes that are related to individuals having substance abuse issues. So that's what I'll be doing coming up soon, basically in my career.
Well, I wanted to congratulate you on the podcast for your new position into your job. So you talked about how you've been working in criminal law this whole entire time. How did you go about choosing the area of criminal law? Was it something that you saw yourself doing or decided to doing in your early years of law school? Talk about that journey to making that decision.
So I pretty much always wanted to be in the criminal space since I was in about middle school. My dad used to watch a lot of like crime shows. One show in particular that he used to watch that I would just sit and watch with him was The Practice. And I don't know if anybody remembers that show from like the 90s, I believe, early 2000s. But basically, I would sit there and just watch it with him. And the funny thing about that show is there was some diversity on there. There was a Black woman attorney that worked at the firm, there was a Black male attorney that worked at the firm. And so I just would sit there, women and men, I would sit there and watch it with him. And I would just be like, wow, like these people seem so powerful and so like they know what they're talking about, they get respect, they dress, you know, in a suit every single day. And so that really inspired me to want to be an attorney because I just wanted to be in the courtroom and just feel like I was important and that I was doing important work. And so that was just my trajectory since then. Like I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I knew I wanted to do criminal law from that moment. And then I always thought I was going to do defense work. But then when I actually got into law school and I talked to some of my professors and I just asked for their input about like what would be the best way for me to be a defense attorney, like what track should I take, how should I go about, you know, becoming a defense attorney. And one of my professors who used to be a judge, he was a prosecutor and he was a defense attorney, basically told me that if you want to be a defense attorney, be a prosecutor first. Because that way you'll build relationships, you'll know how the system works, you'll know a lot of the ins and outs of like different programs that are offered to defendants and just basically like how to try a case and everything like that. And so I was like, okay, I'll probably just do that then. So I just, from that moment on, my main focus was I'll probably just go to the state attorney's office. Luckily, when I was in undergraduate school, I actually interned at the state attorney's office here in Hillsborough County. So I kind of already had a feel for like what that would be like. And so I just decided, all right, that's just what I'm going to do. And I don't actually want to be a defense attorney now that I've actually gone through the process. So I'll probably just stay a government attorney for the rest of my career, probably a prosecutor. But that's pretty much how you know, how I decided to go into criminal law. The funny thing too is that after undergrad, I went to USF after undergrad. I've worked in the legal field since then. I graduated from USF in 2012, and I had been doing civil litigation as a paralegal legal assistant. So most of my work experience out of undergrad had been in the civil litigation space. So I had never really practiced in any type of capacity in criminal law until I actually became an attorney. So yeah, I don't really expect that I would go into any type of civil litigation or leave government work because it's just so beneficial to me personally and my family. So that's probably what I'll just end up doing for the rest of my career.
Yeah, I clearly get, when you're talking about the professor that gave you it was a professor or judge that gave you advice as to coming into prosecution first before you go into defense work. Because practicing is I only practiced for a year and a half, but I understand how you can have the upper hand in understanding the system because we have the playing cards. Like we make all the decisions. We decide whether we want to go to trial or not go to trial. It's telling you a lot of different things. And so I remember even back then deciding as well, being in that position as a law student, trying to figure out, which area of criminal law to go into, whether it's to defense and prosecution work. And it's interesting because I talked to a lot of Black attorneys in particular, and a lot of them said go into prosecution work because they were explaining to me how there's more of an impact as a Black prosecutor because of the fact that we can decide whether to bring cases or not bring cases. So I definitely understand that why that individual gave you that advice. And also, I think as being as a prosecutor as well, I decided as I was in the same position as you. I decided I'm not going to criminal defense. Absolutely not. I saw, working with criminal defense attorneys, and I was like, yeah, I'm kind of glad I went on this side of the prosecution as to work as a prosecutor.
Yeah, it's a struggle. It's a huge struggle.
Yeah,
Like, I just hear from defense attorneys just like kind of chit-chatting in court and how, difficult it is to manage the criminal defendant. Sometimes they just won't show up in court and their attorney is like, "Well,
yeah,
I don't know where he is or she is, Your Honor." And it's kind of embarrassing at times for them, but there's only so much you can do. You can't really control someone else other than yourself. And then also there's like the issue with money. Sometimes they're like chasing after people for money and whatnot. And so I like stability in my life. And so I don't want to be running people down for money or making sure that they,
yeah.
grown adults do what they're supposed to do. And so yeah, I could not see myself being a criminal defense attorney.
Yeah, they definitely have to deal with a lot. And especially in juvenile, you have to deal with their families because you're dealing with kids. Now you have to deal with parents. And I used to see, some of the struggles that even juvenile public defenders had to deal with. And I was like, that's not my portion. I'm not I'm not dealing with that. But in terms of your career, what are some of the most valuable lessons or skills that you gained during your time in Journey to Esquire program that you believe has had a significant impact during your career as an attorney?
So one thing that I would say that was definitely impactful for me going through the program, and it was one of the first like lessons that we learned, was like health, like your physical health, your mental health, work-life balance, self-care, all of that stuff is really, really important because this is a very, very mentally, I wouldn't say physically taxing, at times it could be, but mentally taxing job, especially being a prosecutor and working in criminal work. It is a very mentally exhausting and tasking task that you have to do every single day, making sure that you keep up with your self-care, keep up with your mental health, and recognizing when you need a break, recognizing when you need to, just do something different, or just basically like being aware, being self-aware of that and not running yourself through the ground. It is a very stressful job being an attorney in general. And also, like I said, being in that criminal space, I had struggled with it in the beginning because you're balancing so much in the beginning because you're trying to figure out what am I even doing? I don't even know what I'm doing.
Yes.
And you're balancing what am I even doing? How do I do this job? And then balancing, things going on in your personal life and at home. And then, you know, your reputation and the way that people view you and whatnot. And so you constantly have all of these things that you're juggling. And the one thing that I used to I just felt like it's not that I like feel like I need to be perfect, but I can't have my reputation tarnished in any kind of way. So there were times where, especially in every time, like I would feel like I got it, like okay, I think I'm like in a good place, I would get moved, and it's like this is great. Like they see that I'm doing a really good job, and that they want to move me up, and they trust me with what I'm doing in my work. They want to put me in a new position, which was flattering, but at the same time it's like, well, I just started really getting what I was doing here, and then now I got to transition over here and do something else and figure this out. And so I know like every single time I would transition to a new position, I had to like kind of almost relearn things. And I would be at the office until 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night some days. And it's really, really hard to be at work
Hmm.
from like 8 o'clock in the morning all the way like 12
Yeah.
hours and like not having that mental break just to feel like, okay, I'm prepared for tomorrow. And then you do it the next day and then the next day, and then having to work on weekends. And even some days, like, all right, I got to get out of here. but I still have stuff to do. So then I got to take it home and
Hmm.
continue working on it. And so like that was a real struggle for me at first to try to like figure out how do I do this without running myself into the ground. There would be nights where I would cry or I would just, be laying in bed trying to fall asleep, but I'm still thinking about work or even dreaming about work because I'm just like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
did I do this? Did I do that? Did I forget this? Did I forget that? And you have like all these expectations put on you, and you like your supervisors are kind of like expecting you to, live measure up. And so I never wanted to be that person because there's always those like few people in the office where you're like, you don't want to be like so and so, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like those people that don't live up or
Right.
measure up. And you don't want to be one of those people that they talk about so like negatively. So I would always constantly be like, putting work first above all things. And so that was something I struggled with, but I'm at a place now where I'm very much comfortable with what I do, that I don't work from home anymore. I don't even bring my laptop at home. I don't have my emails like tied to my phone because if I'm not at
Yeah.
work, I'm not working. So it can wait until tomorrow or it can wait until Monday. I don't work on the weekends. I don't work from home. I spend time with my family. And part of that too is the fact that, since, graduating from law school and becoming an assistant state attorney, I had a child. So I have a whole baby at home and I need to focus on my child as well. And so I had to definitely put a stop to that and to set boundaries. And that's something that I thought about when I decided that I needed to put those boundaries in place. I needed to go back to the lessons that I learned in Journey to Esquire and implement some of the things that they talked about in that session that we did, the like mental health and self-care, and put that stuff into place. And the boundaries for me is when I'm not at work, I'm not working. So don't
Yeah.
talk to me about work, don't text me about work, don't email me about work, because whatever it is can wait until Monday or the next day in the morning. There's never anything that's going to happen in the middle of the night where I'm going to have to jump on the computer and do. No, it can wait until tomorrow. That's fine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was
That
one of
that
those things that I took away.
Yeah, that's good. Work-life balance is something definitely is a struggle, especially in your first couple of years as an attorney. And I think especially in criminal law, because I've worked in both areas of criminal law and civil law. Criminal law is very fast-paced. Like you're in court every day. A lot of times you have a lot more trials than you do in civil litigation. The pressure is definitely, I would say, because it's more fast-paced, it's a lot worse than I would compare to my time in civil law so far. And so the emphasis of work-life balance is necessary. What advice would you give to someone who is dealing with what you have gone through in the sense of you're in this space, you're a new attorney, you come in a lot of times, right? You don't really know. Law school prepares you to practice law, but there's a lot of things that you don't learn until you actually start to practice. And so it can become overwhelming where you start to overwork yourself and to the point where now you're mentally exhausted and you can't function the next day or you can't function and be able to do what you're required to do. So what advice would you give to that individual who is like, oh my goodness, I feel overwhelmed in this moment? Like, as to how to navigate work-life balance, because you touched on boundaries, which I also think it's necessary to set, for yourself. Because if you don't set them, your supervisor is not going to set them for you, or anybody else is going to set them for you. So, what would you give? What advice would you give to someone that's dealing with who dealt with what you've gone through?
I would say my biggest thing would be there's a lot of socializing that goes on in the office when you're around other people. And you can find yourself like sitting in someone else's office talking for like 30 minutes to an hour, and you guys are it's good camaraderie to a certain extent, but you've just wasted like 30 to 45 minutes or even an hour just,
Hmm.
talking to somebody where you could have been getting work done. So I've used setting boundaries also in the office where like if I'm in the office, I'm doing work and I am, prioritizing doing my work as opposed to, socializing. I think that in the beginning, a lot of times I was socializing a lot more than I was actually working. But yeah, like I socialized a lot in the beginning, especially when I was in misdemeanor. I socialized a lot and I had, made some friends or whatever through doing that. But really, like if you want to like have that downtime with somebody to like really get to know them, you might want to do that outside of the office and not during office hours because you're gonna pay for that time later. That hour or 45 minutes that you took talking and socializing in the office with whoever it was, you're going to pay for it later. Whereas, oh man, I didn't get such and such done. Now I'm going to have to take some work home with me, or now I'm going to have to work on the weekends because I didn't get such and such done. So,
Yeah,
my thing is now I close my door, like I close my office door. So that way, like when people aren't just like when your door is open in the office,
yeah, yeah,
people walk by, oh, you're here. They come in, they start talking, you guys, and then like I have a hard time trying to end conversations too, like because it's like awkward just be like, hey, can you like get out of here? Because like I have work to do or whatever, and like you're constantly just sitting there talking. But I just close my door now, so that way nobody like feels like the need to like just come and start chit chatting with me. Unless if they have
yeah,
something to actually talk to me about, they'll knock on my door because it'll be work related and we're not just like,
yeah,
talking about other things and chit chatting. Because I have a lot of things to do in this 8 hours that I'm here, because that's how I get my work done. So I don't have to work at home later in the day, and I don't have to bring home work home with me on the weekends. So that's something I had to learn. And I realized the easiest way to get that done is just to close your door. If you have a door, close your door because then nobody's going to just like feel the need to just come into your office and just chit chat with you if your door is closed, because they'll have to do that added step of knocking. And if they're
yeah,
knocking, there's something, they have a question or they have
yeah,
something they really need to talk to you about, and it's usually work related. So that's one thing I would say is just like keep the chit chatting and stuff to a minimum. I know a lot of people like end up making their best friends at work, which is fine, but do that at lunch. Like set aside like a 30 minutes, hey, let's all go to lunch, or let's go, to lunch for an hour and actually sit down and have proper conversations where I know I've already budgeted this amount of time to do that. So I'm not cutting into my work time and then having to pay for it later. That's one thing I would suggest for people in the beginning that are struggling with like getting all of their work done, or, prioritizing work. Close your door, set aside that time to socialize during a lunch instead of doing it in the workday, because you lose a lot of time just like because you'll do it with this person over here and then another 30 minutes over there with this person, and then you're like, oh my gosh, like I wasted 2 hours of the day just talking to people and not actually getting any work done.
yeah. I can definitely attest to the socializing factor of criminal law. I'm working in the state attorney's office for that, and but as you said, it's important to set boundaries because especially when you come into this, like I would say this to be very clear, it's not likely that you can escape the work that you have to put forward. Like you're going, it's very likely coming in as an attorney, no matter what law you start into, that you're probably going to work more than 8 hours. You're probably going to be working at nights. You're probably going to be working weekends. And that's just the part of the process of you learning the tools, learning the law. And I believe like once you find your rhythm, which a lot of attorneys, like once they become more acquainted with the law or the area in terms of practice wise, then you start to be able to balance that. But even in that process of you working, I would suggest even taking a mental health day, like taking maybe 1 or 2 Saturdays and being like, I am not going to touch anything. I remember when I was working there, one of the things, unless it was necessary, if I was going to work, I was going to work at nights, or I was going to work on Sunday nights to repair. But Saturdays, I was like, absolutely not. That is a day that I'm keeping to myself. And that's all a part of setting boundaries for yourself. You know yourself because you can definitely get drawn into this legal world and allow you to overwhelm you. In your career, can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges or obstacles that you've had in your career and how did you overcome them? I know you talked briefly about being difficult in the process, but can you touch on either expand on that or talk on some of the other challenges and obstacles that you've had in your career?
I would say The biggest challenge so far has been the fact that I did have a child while I've been an attorney. And that was really, really challenging because being pregnant and being an attorney is just really difficult, especially in the first trimester when you're like nauseous all day and you just feel really crappy or whatever. And then you're in court and you literally feel like you need to vomit and your stomach is just like in knots, but you still have to get up there and you still have to do your job and you still have to advocate on behalf of the state. That was the most difficult thing that I had to deal with. And I'm actually expecting again. So, for some reason, the first trimester is just really, really difficult. It gets better and you kind of like get used to it or whatever, but the stress of not only your body is kind of going through a whole bunch of changes, but then also having to work and to, do the best that you can every single day while you're basically making a human being was probably the most difficult part of it. Like I said before, it was difficult, you know, trying to balance work and life, but it was kind of like, all right, well, if I have to work until 8, it's fine. I do have another daughter and she's like a teenager at the time. So she's not like, she doesn't really need me. She's self sufficient. She's, fine or whatever. And so, like, I don't really have to devote so much time where I feel like, okay, it's 7, 6 o'clock at night. I need to be home or whatever. Usually teenagers are just left to their own devices. So I didn't really feel the pressure of being a mother, a working mom until I had this last baby and am now about to have another one. So now that's where I like really needed to start to put some boundaries into place because I can't be working when I come home. Like I tried to do it after I had my daughter last year. I tried to do it. I tried to come home and, work, but it's just difficult when you have a baby who's running around, who wants your attention, who needs
Yeah.
you. You need to breastfeed, you need to do, you need to, be a parent to them a lot more than you do to like a 15-year-old or whatever. So that's where I really like had to cut like that time and be like, look, I'm going to make the most out of my 8 hours when I am in here. And then when I'm not here, I am at home with my kid. I'm at home with my husband. I'm at home with my family and putting them first and giving them what they need from me. So that way I don't feel that like mom guilt where you're like,
Yeah.
working and you're putting your career before your family. And I don't ever want my family to feel that way. So that's been the most challenging part of it is like having children. And I don't know if, men feel the same way, but it's definitely something that women and mothers feel that, you're never giving any one thing in your life 100%. You're only
Yeah.
giving them a portion of it. You're giving 50% here, 50% there, or 30% here, 60% there, whatever. But you're never giving any one thing 100%. Luckily, I have a really great partner. My husband is amazing and he is very helpful and we are work really well as a team, to raise our family and to live the best life that we possibly can. But I would say that that is a really difficult and challenging thing to basically have kids and to be an
Yeah.
attorney, especially, working for the state and being an assistant state attorney in the criminal space. I know that for me personally, there's been several opportunities in the office that have come up to do sex crimes, and I refuse. I would never, that's something that you have to want to do. It's not like they would just put you in
Yeah.
that position to
Yeah.
do sex crimes, but I could not stomach being in sex crimes for the very fact that I have kids. And I don't even know if it's just because I have children. I just can't even like read the facts of some of the things that people do
Yeah.
to children. I'm very much like the elderly, children, and animals. Like once you start like doing things to them that are just inappropriate or violent, like it just makes my stomach turn. So those type of crimes, like I could never prosecute. So I stick to things that I can actually handle and stomach. But yeah, that's probably been the most challenging thing. But setting boundaries definitely helps. And also just being more comfortable in that, in setting boundaries and knowing what you're doing
Mhm.
and having the confidence to do that. I'm glad I waited also to have kids because I think I was an attorney for like a year and a half, maybe almost two, yeah, like a year and a half before I even started having kids. So I kind of like started to already kind of get the picture of what being a
Yeah.
prosecutor entailed before I started having kids. So that way, like when it came time to me to set the boundaries that I needed to, I felt more comfortable doing it because I've been doing this long enough to know what I'm doing to be able to put those boundaries up. But if I were to like had been, just fresh, fresh into the job and then started to have kids, like I wouldn't feel as confident. I would still be struggling now to set those boundaries. I'd probably still be working on the weekends and still be working when I come home. But because I, the level of experience that I have now, I can confidently do that and feel okay with I will be prepared come court Monday and not have to work on
Yeah.
Sunday. I will prep my docket on Friday before I leave work because I already know I have a docket on Monday. I mean, obviously you can't prep for like random add-on things that get added on after you've already prepped your docket, but things that have already been there, you already know they're going to come.
Yeah.
So I always prep my docket and make sure that my docket is prepared a week before, and then the day before as well. I always do one last check and make sure, okay, is all my stuff in place? So at least I can say, to the judge whatever I need to say, that they know that I prepared the docket ahead of time. But yeah, honestly, I don't work on the weekend, so I will prep my docket on Friday before I leave work that day for Monday. And then if there's like a random add-on, that something that gets added on, I'll come into the office early enough to where I'll just look at like that one last time before the docket starts
Yeah.
and make sure that I have some sort of a response for something if that is the case.
But yeah, you touched on something that honestly I can't say that I hear very often or they talk about very openly very often, which is the difficulty of work-life balance in terms of parenting. So I'm glad that you touched on that because, especially from a woman's perspective, navigating that can definitely be difficult. I've heard it like generally mentioned in law school, but I love the fact that you're saying, well, that in a way, having kids basically push you to say, you know what, I need to set boundaries. And then you start to realize that, okay, this work thing of working to 8 o'clock is not really as serious as I thought it was, and that I can get things done if I structure my time well. And I think that that's what the issue is as an attorney, it's just structuring time well because it's very easy for time to get ahead of you. For criminal law, you don't have to deal with this, but this also works significantly and or applies significantly in billable hours because I work in the world of civil litigation, so we have to navigate billable hours, and so they're like, listen, you got to set amount of you need this amount of time every day, and so you have to discipline yourself, and that can kind of be hard in your first couple of years of trying to navigate that. But I love what you said about you yourself. You have to set them in order to make sure that you basically keeping your sanity and navigating all the different areas of your life.
I
Um,
hear a lot of horror stories about billable hours, and I know there's several people that left our office and then came back because they didn't realize how horrible billable hours are. I've been hearing about billable hours since I was a paralegal legal assistant, and I used to work with attorneys who had to bill, and they would just be like, "Oh my gosh, like this is like so annoying, like oh my god, all these billable hours," and just like I've never heard anything positive about billable hours. So and then doing what I do now and then seeing people leave and then come back because they're just like still horror stories about billable hours. They'd rather do this and have this type of stress than that type of stress. And so I'm like, okay, well, I know for sure that I definitely don't want that kind of stress. So I'm just gonna stay where I'm at and do this because
yeah,
it's just I don't it is difficult structuring your day in a way because you're in court all day. So it's like, when am I going to have time to do all the
yeah,
other things that I need to do on certain the days that you are in court? But you kind of know your schedule for the most part. It's pretty predictable. And so if you're not really in court all the time, and then you're just in the office and you're doing like office type work or doing depositions and stuff like that, you have to fill in that gap of time to figure out like this six
Yeah.
hours where I'm like in the my office time, what am I going to be doing and how am I going to structure it to where I make the most of that time? And so there it's you're just constantly time management. Like that's the thing. Like you constantly have to manage your time as an attorney, and that's just part of the job, and it's difficult, but it's something that you're just going to always have to do and struggle with every single day. I've just learned from other attorneys that you just do a little bit of, at least for what we do, you just do a little bit of everything every day. If
Yeah.
you just do
Yeah.
a couple discoveries, do a couple discoveries. If you have to do some follow-ups, do some follow-ups. If you have new cases you need to get offers on, do some of that. So like you're touching a little bit of all the like buckets of work that you need to do every single day. So that way it's not like you have a million things to do and you haven't done any of it because you're not structuring your time properly. So
Yeah.
that's what I've pretty much like figured out, that like you need to do a little bit of everything every single day.
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense. So for those that are coming into the Journey to Esquire program this upcoming year, what advice would you have to those as to how they should navigate the program?
I would say that make as much time as you possibly can to like go to every single one of the sessions, because there's a lot of important information and a lot of valuable information from every single one of the presentations and the speakers and stuff. I would say like the biggest thing that I took away is networking is really, really important for yourself and for your career, and in doing whatever it is that you want to do with your career. Networking is really important, and going to networking events and just meeting people and going out there, putting yourself out there if you can. It's really important thing to basically have in your arsenal and working on those skills, networking skills and stuff. I did a lot of networking when I was in law school, when I was in the program, and a little bit after that, but it's kind of hard to network now when you have like a baby and then another one on the way and stuff like that. Kind of like life can get into in the way of that. But if you don't really have that, if you're just like a single person or you're just married and don't have any kids, like make the time to network, make the time to go to events, make the time to meet people, because the legal community, especially in Tampa, is very small.
Yeah.
And so you're going to see a lot of the same faces at these events. You're going to see a lot of the same people. So network, make connections with judges, make connections with other attorneys and other organizations, so that way like when you're trying to change your career or you're trying to change the type of job work that you do, you already have that connection to kind of like try to get your foot into the door and somewhere, and just be genuine too. Don't just like try to make connections with people just for the sole purpose of your own personal gain, because you can also provide assistance to people as well and you didn't even know it. Like you could know some about something that somebody else doesn't, or be in a space that somebody else isn't very experienced in, and so you can be helpful to others as well. So make time to make those connections and be genuine in those connections, so that way people don't feel like, well, you're only just making this connection just because you need something from me or my organization. Just be genuine, be yourself, and always make time for networking if you can, if it's feasible for you to do that.
Yeah. Amazing advice. Amazing advice. It's interesting because I've interviewed several different attorneys on the podcast, and everyone has said the same thing. Networking matters. And I remember even being in law school, them telling us networking matters. They basically said, yes, getting a law degree is great, but a lot of opportunities in the field are going to become because of who you know.
Right.
And so, and I love the advice that you were saying about, not looking at it from this perspective of just how can I receive, but also how can you give? Like,
Hmm.
how can I help this person out or give benefit to this individual? Because you are going to be a lot more impactful if you took the time to give something to that person, if your resume comes across their desk, they're going to be more inclined to, just because of what you've done for them or that benefit that you gave, to be able to consider you as a candidate. So I love that advice. So what we were talking about, we're coming to the end. Is there that you want to give contact information, socials, or any of that stuff to the listeners, so that anyone can reach you in the event that they want to connect with you?
Yeah, so if anybody is interested in becoming a assistant state attorney here in Hillsborough County, my email address is Z as in zebra, E, T as in Tom, R, E, N as in Nancy, N as in Nancy, E underscore J at SAO13th.com. That's S as in Sam, A, the letter O, T as in Tom, H dot 13th, 13th.com. And yeah, that's my email address at the state attorney's office. And I love being a state attorney. I love working for the government. It is very stressful. It is very hard, but you learn so much working there. You help people. It feels really good to help people and to, it's frustrating. It gets frustrating at times, but you'll always remember that one person that you like helped, or that victim that you kind of like made whole or made feel better about something that happened to them that, in their life is like a tragedy, but to you, you see so many of these things that come across your desk and it's like, oh, one of these again. But for somebody personally, something like really bad happening to them and you actually getting justice for them, it feels good, to feel like you did good work for that person. And the benefits are great. It's part of the reason why I'm probably going to stay working as a government employee. Student loans and also pension and health insurance, like those are things that you can't really beat on the private market. And so with having a young family like I do, it just makes sense for me to just, stay as a government, especially for the state of Florida, um, employee and get those benefits for my family, help my community, and just do overall good work for my community. And so I would definitely suggest people to at least start out working at the state attorney's office or being a government attorney, because the level of experience that you get from it is invaluable for whatever you decide to do in your career, as you would know because you've done that yourself. So but yeah, if anybody wants to connect and want to get, some experience at the state attorney's office, they can always reach out to me and send me an email, and I can make sure that they can, get their foot in the door over at the state attorney's office here in Tampa.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. We appreciate you taking the time to talk to our listeners and go give us updates as to what happens to the program and give advice. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk to us. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
This is Journey to Esquire, the podcast Alumni Updates. I'm Abigail Dean, and remember, the journey continues and success is just around the corner.